Hola a todos. Thank you for taking a break from the Mexico South Africa match to join us for P4AD's second episode of our town hall. My name is Alejandra Borbolla Diaz. I'm the bilingual digital communications manager here at Patients for Affordable Drugs. In June, we're hosting a series of conversations with members of our senior staff to answer questions directly from patients, advocates, and supporters of our work and where the fight goes from here. We've gotten hundreds of questions from our community, and we're trying to answer as many as we can. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Meredith Basie, CEO of Patients for Affordable Drugs.
Excited for our chat. Looking forward to it.
So, thank you all for tuning in. Meredith, let's jump right into questions, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, to start our series, Meredith, what makes P4AD different from every other health advocacy group out there?
Well, I think we're special for a number of different reasons, but I think one of the primary reasons is that we organize patients across all different conditions, illnesses. It's not just one community that we represent, and that gives us an immense amount of power. We have patients now in every single state and every single congressional district, and the one thing that everyone shares is that the price of the medications that you're paying is far too high. So that's one reason. I think another reason is that we don't take any funding from any group that profits from the development or distribution of prescription drugs. And that's super important because it allows us to be independent and it allows us to speak up about why drug prices are high and speak truth to power ultimately, because there are a lot of other patient advocacy groups, but they don't speak out on the issue of pricing because they're afraid or they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them if they're receiving a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industry in general. And I think also there are, or I should say I know, there are a number of groups who are not just patient advocacy groups. They are more like pharma front groups who are doing the dirty work on behalf of the industry. So we are very different to all of those, and that gives us the opportunity to be powerful patient voice representation inside and outside Congress. What else can I say? I think that P4AD was also founded by David Mitchell, a patient who was living with multiple myeloma for 15 years until we sadly lost him in January. But it wasn't just David in this fight. It's David and our board and many of our staff, more than half of our staff, also identify as patients, organizing other patients. So I think that helps keep us very focused on being patient-led and patient-supported and keeping the priorities of patients and lower drug prices at the top of our minds. I could definitely go on, so I'm going to hand the mic back to Ale.
I appreciate that, Meredith, because we have a lot of ground to cover, folks. We're very excited to have Meredith with us today. So, Meredith, Sherry from Utah asked, why do Americans pay so much more for drugs than people in other countries, and what would it take to change that?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a really important one, and it's why we're here, right? One of the primary reasons that Americans pay the highest drug prices in the world is because the US government hasn't been negotiating drug prices. Most other high-income nations have negotiated prices for many, many, many years for their populations. And until recently, just in 2022, with the passage of the drug pricing reforms in the Inflation Reduction Act, it was the first time that the US government was now able to have the power to negotiate drug prices for Americans and for people on Medicare. And that was just for 60 drugs, right? So there's a lot further to go there. So that was one reason. A second reason is that Big Pharma sets the price of medications. So the launch prices when they first come to market are set by the industry. And there's no mechanism in this country to ensure that taxpayer, really, who's funding a lot of these new drugs, these new innovations, is getting is included in that price, right? Is thought about when it comes to deciding what the price is and what it means to be affordable. So that's something that is a main problem here in the US. And the fact that the US pharmaceutical industry manipulates the patent system. They find all these different shady tricks to maintain their monopolies and keep prices high for as long as possible. All of these ways, all these different loopholes, are part of the reason why Americans, unfortunately, are still paying more than people in other countries for the very same brand name medications.
Yeah.
That's a starting point.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
No,
like, how long I got?
No, I mean, Meredith, you touched on some great points. I mean, when I joined the team and I learned all about product hopping and patent tickets, I was shocked, folks. You really will not believe the stuff that these folks get away with. But we have many resources available if you're willing to learn more. But thank you, Meredith. That was a great answer. So, another question for you. Drug companies have lost challenge after challenge to Medicare negotiation. Why are they still fighting so hard?
Well, let me start by saying that Medicare negotiation in this program is helping to change the trajectory of drug pricing here in the US. So starting point, when the law was passed in 2022, 10 pharmaceutical corporations decided to file expensive lawsuits to stop the program. And I'm very pleased to say in the last couple of weeks, we won. Essentially, there were 6 of these cases that had reached all the way to the Supreme Court, and even though all the lower courts had already rejected their claims, this was part of the pharmaceutical industry's strategy to see if they could get a decision from the Supreme Court. So, why do they keep going? Because they can. Because they are so well funded. Because they are it's charging Americans extortionate prices that goes back to the industry, which means that they can essentially throw money at any problem and see what sticks. And that's what they've been doing. This has been in the courtroom, and now we've seen over the last couple of years again a focus on Capitol Hill. So that means that every time a patient goes to speak to somebody on Capitol Hill, we are up against the power of the lobbying industry, who are talking to Congress people every single day, again, because they have the money to do so. So why? Because they can, and they will keep doing it because they want to maintain their monopolies. And really, it's all about power. That's what they want, to keep the power to be able to continue to dictate high prices to Americans for as long as possible. And that's it.
No, that's really powerful, Meredith. And I think that really speaks as to, why we need patience in this fight,
Mhm.
because we're fighting against, like you said, a beast of an industry.
Mhm.
But speaking of patience, we had William from Pennsylvania ask us a questions. A lot of people feel like the system is rigged and there's nothing they can do. What does it actually look like to fight back? And is this really making a difference?
Oof, yeah. Well, it's we had so many questions, and this is another great one. So what does it look like to fight back? First of all, David Mitchell founded P4AD because he wanted patients, or imagined that patients could serve as like a counterweight to the pharmaceuticals industry, the industry's power on Capitol Hill, right? And he was right in that vision. So what it means is sharing stories, being the voice to challenge the talking points that industry uses time and time again to try to get their way, get the laws that they want, and persuade people that any adjustment to to the laws that will challenge their monopoly power would be a problem for American innovation. And that's simply not true. So what does it look like to fight back? It's about sharing your story. It's about getting trained by P4AD to, whether it's online or in person, to come to Washington and share your story. It's about taking digital action. We've had patients just this year take tens of thousands of actions, and from patients in every single state, pushing back on the industry and also pushing for bills that will lower drug prices. And there's actually some exciting ones coming up next week that will be discussed. That we are hopeful we will, with patient support, be able to get them moving in the right direction, because we know patients need relief now.
Yes, they do. Thank you, Meredith. I really appreciated that you touched on the talking points that the industry has, because as we know, misinformation is a big piece in the work that we do, right? So drug companies say that if we lower prices, innovation will suffer. Is that really true?
That old chestnut. Well, we've been hearing that same argument for decades from the industry, but the data tells a very different story, right? We know that NIH, the taxpayers' funds, that's all of us, are in fact the largest funders of biomedical research in the world. And every single drug that's been brought to market and approved by the FDA, and even just in the last 10 years, there has been some public funding involved with that production, right? So don't be mistaken in that regard. I think also, who more important than patients understands the value of innovation, but we need both. We need access in terms of affordability, and we need the new drugs to come to market. But we know that drugs don't work if people can't afford them. And so it really doesn't make the difference that Americans deserve if the drugs that are coming to market are priced so far out of reach that nobody can take them. So the industry is doing extremely well. Their CEOs are getting paid many millions of dollars. Their shareholders are doing exceptionally well. And those are the people that they are responsible to, not or beholden to, I should say, rather than patients. Ultimately, they care about maintaining those high prices so that they can continue their buybacks. They can continue to profit at an exorbitant rate. And also, we know there was a West Health study a few years ago that came out that said that the pharmaceutical industry could lose $1 trillion, with a T, $1 trillion over the next decade, and still be the most profitable industry. So those arguments don't hold up. And knowing as well that in general the industry spends about 2 to 4 times more on sales and marketing. That means marketing new drugs than it does on research and development costs. So don't believe those myths, because that's what they spend a lot of money on trying to get us all to believe.
No, I appreciate that, Meredith. And I know a lot of our audience hears those points. So if you're hearing those points, we try to do in our social team, always try to push back and, share the real facts and the real stats. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're, again, always debunking those lies. But thank you so much, Meredith. And vamos a cambiar el tono un poquito, porque sé que tenemos algunos latinos viéndonos desde casa. Mi mamá también, saludos, mami. ¿Podrías hablarnos sobre parte del trabajo que estamos haciendo en español y por qué es importante organizarnos dentro de esta comunidad?
Bueno, muchas gracias, Ale. Y vamos, México. Mira, los latinos en ese país son un grupo que son desproporcionadamente impactado, dañado por el alto costo de los medicamentos recetados. Y eso es un gran problema. Y desafortunadamente, en general, hay una falta de información sobre este tema en español. Entonces nosotros pensamos, mira, tenemos que hacer algo. Es importante también que incluimos a pacientes que prefieren hablar español o su primer idioma es español, para que se pueda entender bien la política y cómo se pueden involucrar también en ese movimiento. ¿Está bien?
Sí, no, gracias, Meredith. Y como latina, ¿no? Cuando yo vine a este país, realmente ver cómo no hay recursos en español, ¿no? Uno se siente perdido, uno se siente que nuestras voces no son parte de este movimiento, pero como tú dices, realmente nos vemos desproporcionadamente afectados por este tema del que estamos hablando, entonces es fundamental como latinos que nuestras voces sean representadas en este movimiento. Así que si tenemos algunos latinos aquí que están pensando que a lo mejor sus voces no dan la diferencia, realmente sí lo hace. Y tenemos muchos ejemplos de esto, así que por favor, pónganse en contacto con nosotros. Así que, Mary, te tengo una pregunta más en español. ¿Qué te mantiene esperanzada en esta lucha?
Buena pregunta otra vez. La gente, nosotros tenemos el pueblo. Ellos tienen el dinero, nosotros tenemos el pueblo. Y yo creo que con el pueblo se puede ganar. Y hemos tenido unas ganancias recién y durante los últimos 5 años realmente impactados, y fue a causa de pacientes, no era a causa del dinero, era por las voces de pacientes en este país que han dicho basta ya. Todos estamos mirando hacia la misma dirección, que es bajar los precios de los medicamentos. Y encima, que es muy importante ahora, eso no es un tema que se esconde, es un tema principal, yo creo que para la mayoría de la gente, y 9 en cada 10 personas en este país, 9 en cada 10 dicen que quieren que el Congreso haga más para bajar los precios de medicamentos. Y muchas de las personas ahora entienden que es las empresas farmacéuticas que son parte del problema. Y por eso veo mucha esperanza, porque hemos crecido mucho y hemos avanzado mucho y tenemos que seguir luchando.
Claro, gracias, Meredith. Y nosotros como organización tenemos muchos recursos en español, tenemos diferentes sitios web, tenemos oportunidades para que ustedes escriban cartas al Congreso, tenemos oportunidades para que ustedes se pongan en contacto con nosotros, tenemos personal aquí en nuestra organización que hablamos español, estamos aquí para ayudarles porque como Meredith dice, nuestra voz realmente hace la diferencia y tenemos que estar todos juntos en este movimiento. But Meredith, I was really moved by that answer. Do you think you could share that with our English speaking audience? So what I asked Meredith is, what keeps you hopeful in this fight?
Well, I won't let's see if I can remember everything I said. But the truth is, what keeps me hopeful in this fight is all of you, all of us, the people, right? We have people on our side. The industry has money on their side, but we have people, and that's why we're going to win. And we've been winning, right? We've had this huge win in the last few weeks when the Supreme Court declined to hear the petitions of the pharmaceutical industry. We've been pushing back against a lot of bad bills. And of course, there was the 2022 prescription drug law, which wouldn't have been achieved if it weren't for patients. So I think it's also important to think about the fact that this isn't just some issue that people aren't aware of now. It's something that 9 out of 10 Americans are concerned about. 9 out of 10 Americans want Congress to do more to lower the price of prescription drugs. And to me, that is a bipartisan issue. We haven't mentioned actually that we're a bipartisan organization. We work with people both sides of the aisle, which is critical, not just to get these laws passed, but also it reflects the issue and who it's affecting, but also our power. So thanks to all of you, to patients, that is what's giving me hope, and turning some of these stories that you share, with so much grace into power to fight an industry, and we can turn that into powerful energy for change. So thank you, Ali. I hope that was good enough.
No, thank you so much, Meredith. That was an incredible answer that really highlights why P4AD does the work that we do. We are proud to show up every day and fight for patients, and we will continue to do so. But again, gracias, Meredith. This was a great episode. Thank you for those that are watching live at home, and thank you to those that submitted questions as well. Don't worry, we're not done yet. We'll be back next week with Tamia Moye, who is our Director of Advocacy and Organizing. Tammy is going to give us a rundown of all the ways that we can get involved with P4AD and really the power of sharing our story. So, again, thank you so much to everybody that tuned in for our live stream, and we will see you here next week.